not have a degree in English or literature. I'm not some literary expert or a Rory Gilmore. I am just a common Christian wife and mother. And I read Paradise Lost by John Milton, and I absolutely loved it. And I think you will too. My name is Haley, and I am a Christian wife, homeschooling mother of 3, out to redeem my very own literary education. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Paradise Lost by John Milton. This is a retelling of the Genesis story, so it covers the fall of Satan, the creation of the world, the temptation of Eve, and then Eve tempting Adam, and then Paradise Lost, and then what the future looks like for them. But this is told in epic poetry form, so it's not a regular fictional story. It's told in poetic form, so think kind of Homer's The Iliad and the Odyssey, both of which I've never read, so I did not really know what to expect diving into this book. And the reason I picked it up because I am participating in the Literary Life Podcast's 2024 Reading Challenge, Books of Centuries. And you are picking 1 or 2 classic works for each century across time and basically reading some of the greatest books ever written. And this book was written in 1667, I believe. So yeah, this is an old one. And I was extremely intimidated about it at first. But then I picked up a Preface to Paradise Lost written by C.S. Lewis, which is an entire book, not only about epic poetry and what it is. That kind of is what he covers in the first half of his book. He goes through the form of epic poetry, what it is, what it's not, why Milton used that form to tell this story. And then in the second half of A Preface to Paradise Lost, C.S. Lewis goes into the theology of Paradise Lost. How should you read it? What should you think about the characters of Satan and Adam and Eve and the angels? And to me, it was really a defense of this book. When I first finished this, I went to YouTube because I wanted to discuss it. That's just something I love to do when I finish a book. I want to see what other people's thoughts are. And immediately all I saw was literary analysis and literary criticisms and breakdowns of Paradise Lost, which is not what I wanted. I wanted to gush about Paradise Lost and the story and the enjoyment of it. And there's certainly a time and place for things like literary analysis. I think it helps us understand how stories are formed. But I also often feel like you can lose the heart of a story in a book by looking at it that way. That is personally why I did not enjoy reading classic books in high school. But it's why I love reading them now, because I'm not looking at them, trying to analyze them and make these books make me smarter. I'm just reading them, seeing what the author has to offer me, and I'm enjoying them. And this idea was originally introduced to me also by C.S. Lewis in his book An Experiment in Criticism, which is all about that, the way a good reader reads a book versus the way that the world analytically tells you to read a book, which is not very fun. So if you're a reader, I highly recommend this book as well by C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is my male author of the year, so I'm reading a ton of his works. But the fact that he wrote a book, an entire book, about this book, tells you the impact and importance not only did this have in C.S. Lewis's life and his own writing, but in the literary world in general. This was Milton's, desire to bring a story that honors God in the same way that some of these other great epics did. And so before reading this, I had never read an epic poem. So I didn't know what to expect going in. But the first thing I will tell you when you pick up Paradise Lost is to take it slowly. I started this book back in March. It's now September. So it took me 6 or 7 months to finish it, and that's okay. It was totally worth taking my time and reading the story. This epic poem is broken down into 12 books. So if you needed to stretch this out for a whole year, you could read 1 book a month, or you could do it in 6 months and read 2 books a month and finish it that way, which is about what I did. But going into this, what you need to know is that this is a fictional retelling of the Genesis story. So the Bible gives us a play-by-play about what happens. So we know that Satan falls. We know that God creates the earth. We know that he creates Adam and Eve, and that Eve eats the apple because she was tempted by Satan the serpent and then offers it to Adam. These are things that we know based off reading Genesis, especially if you're a Christian. But we don't know why they do all of these things. We don't know why Satan chose to rebel against God. We don't know how he felt about it after he lost and was condemned for all of eternity. We don't know why Eve was tempted to eat the apple, or the fruit, not the apple, the forbidden fruit in the first place. And we don't know why not only did she offer it to Adam, but he ate it too. So we may know that these things happen, but we don't know their thoughts and their motivations. And that's really what Milton is exploring in Paradise Lost, is those thoughts and motivations and musings of these characters. But because it's told in epic poetry form, it's absolutely beautiful. The imagery in this book absolutely took my breath away, and I loved it. Now, it took me a minute to get into the language. So if you open up the book and you start reading and you just are like, whoa, I can't do this, I highly recommend reading it out loud to yourself. You don't have to read it aloud to your children or your spouse. Just read it aloud to yourself, and it's going to help that language flow naturally. I don't know why, but it works. That's what I did. So I was outside with my children trying to read this book, and I was reading it aloud because I could just process the story better that way. So I highly recommend that. And then another tip I have is to remember, this is a retelling. We don't really actually know what the thoughts and motivations of Adam and Eve and even Satan were. We can only guess and imagine and wonder because we're curious. And that's what he does, but I love what he does with the characters. So Satan is incredibly interesting, and a lot of people who read Paradise Lost find sympathy with him. I personally didn't. I think it's just because I'm already naturally inclined to see him as an enemy, but also because of this line right here. After Satan falls, he says, "Is there no place left for repentance? None for pardon left." And then he goes on to say, "How soon would height recall high thoughts?" And then again, "Which would but lead me to worse relapse and a heavier fall." So this is the one thing in the book that kind of points out to me that Satan knows there's no chance for repentance because he knows he would do it again anyway. And that's something C.S. Lewis explores in his book, A Preface to Paradise Lost, is the character of Satan. But he's an interesting character to read about because when you start Paradise Lost, it's from his point of view. The first few books and parts of this book is completely what he is thinking. And it's interesting to be in his mind and to see how he tempted others and how he felt about that, because he was actually pretty, not necessarily repentant, because I think he would still do it all over again, but he was lamenting his consequences for sure. And then the characters of Adam and Eve are so majestic. I feel differently about them after reading this. I think as a Christian we can look at Adam and Eve and blame them for all of the sin in the world, but now I have some empathy for them. Understanding why Eve ate the apple, why she gave it to Adam, and why Adam ate it, made me look at them in a different light. Once again, these are just musings. These aren't facts. We don't actually know why Eve and Adam did what they did. But to just think about that and to think about it and to see them in a more humanizing way was incredibly helpful for me. And what I loved specifically, this just cracked me up. Why did Eve give Adam the apple afterwards? And this is why. "But what if God have seen and death ensue? Then I shall be no more, and Adam, wedded to another Eve, shall live with her enjoying I extinct, a death to think. Confirmed then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him that with him all deaths I could endure. Without him live no life. Eve gave Adam that apple because she was jealous. She did not want him to live life with somebody else because she knew she was wrong, and she feared that. She feared a life, picturing a life of his without her in it. But what really melted my heart was Adam's response. Here is Eve worrying jealously that Adam's going to find happiness with another woman, but Adam eats the apple because... How can I live without thee? How forgo thy sweet converse and love so dearly joined? To live again in these wild woods forlorn, should God create another Eve, and I another rib afford? Yet loss of thee would never from my heart, no, no, I feel the link of nature draw me flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe. He ate that apple because he loved her, and he cannot imagine life without her. That is beautiful. All of the marriage quotes I got from a perfect and sinless Adam and Eve. It just changed me. Here we had Eve, after eating the forbidden fruit. I don't know why I keep saying apple, forbidden fruit. Eve, after she eats the forbidden fruit, has this fear automatically that her husband doesn't love her, which is something that was never questioned before she ate the forbidden fruit. But really, in Adam's mind, he can't imagine a life without her. And I thought that was so beautiful and also funny. Like, how often do we worry about things, you know, in our sin in this fallen world that we don't really have to worry about? I read that part to my husband, you know, why Eve gave Adam the forbidden fruit and why he ate it. And he was like, yep, that's us. I would absolutely eat that forbidden fruit if it meant a life without you. Bliss or woe, for better or worse. And that was so beautiful. In fact, the commonplace quotes that I put in my commonplace book from Paradise Lost were quotes about marriage and life, because I am happily married and I do love my family. So 2 quotes I put in my commonplace book are, first, for nothing lovelier can be found in woman than to study household good and good works in her husband to promote. This is a part of Paradise Lost before the fall. And Eve is kind of this queenly, gentle, submissive creature. She was sinless. And she was in submission to a sinless man, which makes all the difference in the world. But to see her in that reverent light, it truly a queenly state, kind of calls me to a higher standard in my own daily life here in my home. This is our little Eden. This is our family's little paradise. And it's up to me as the mother to not only cultivate a home that's loving to be in, but to help promote my husband in good works, right? As wives, we have great influence over our husbands. And that goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. And that's in Paradise Lost and in the Bible as well. And the next commonplace quote that I put in my commonplace book was this. This is right after Adam and Eve get kicked out of paradise very gently by the archangel. And Eve is lamenting her life in paradise. She is grieving the loss of that. And the archangel says this to her. Thy going is not lonely. With thee goes thy husband. Him to follow thou art bound. Where he abides, think there thy native soil. Your husband is your home. Your husband is your native soil. I thought that was so beautiful. I also read that to my husband, and I have been calling him my native soil ever since. And that's the literary way to flirt with your man. But all of the quotes about marriage in Paradise Lost just was so moving, and it's changed the way I've seen myself. It's changed the way that I've seen my husband, both as image bearers of God, and it changed the way that I see Adam and Eve. I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. It brought the story of Genesis to life and helped me see Adam and Eve as real people, because as a Christian, I believe that they were and are. And just exploring what they really could have thought and seen and felt helped me empathize with them and helped me not quite be so judgmental. I'm not going to blame Adam and Eve for all the problems in the world anymore, because let's be honest, like I said, I also would have given my husband that forbidden fruit, and I probably would have eaten it myself. We all would have. But this story, it was beautiful. It was wonderful. It took me a long time to read, but it was worth every second. And so that's my tip for you. Pick it up and take as long as you need to. Read all the other books you want to read, but pick Paradise Lost up and just read a little bit every single day, because it is going to move and inspire you so much. And the fact that John Milton became blind and wrote Paradise Lost, he wasn't born blind, but he became blind and wrote this story, is a miracle in itself. This book is a miracle, and there are a lot of people who have a lot of differing opinions on it. Like I said, read it as a fictional retelling. Don't read it as perfect theology, because it's not, but it's worth it. And one more tip I have before you pick this up is, because this is an epic poem, obviously John Milton was influenced by Greek mythology like Homer and epic poetry. And so there's quite a bit of Greek mythology references in here. Now, I haven't read hardly any, if at all, Greek mythology, and so I didn't get any of the references or anything like that. I just glossed right over them and kept reading, and it was fine. I still understood the main narrative of the story. I don't feel like I missed anything, because there was so much other surrounding context that I understood was what Milton was trying to say. So if you are not familiar with Greek mythology, don't let that stop you from picking up Paradise Lost. Just pick it up and see what it has to offer you the first time around. This book had a lot of footnotes and endnotes, and I did not stop to read them. Nope, didn't even bother. I just read the story completely through the first time and got the story in. And that's the main thing. That's all I needed, and it was enough to make me love it, to make me want to pick it up again, and to make me want to recommend it to you. And I will read this again. I actually would like to read some Greek mythology now, and so that when I come back to Paradise Lost, I will understand some of the things that Milton was saying. But you could read this book over and over again and always walk away with something different, I think. And so don't be intimidated by it. Pick up a book like I did, something like A Preface to Paradise Lost by C.S. Lewis, and I'm sure there are others. Read it first so that you kind of know how to prepare yourself about what to think going in, and then just dive in. Take it slow, take as much time as you need. Read all the other books you want to. Just work through this a little bit every day. Don't stress about the things you don't understand. Just breeze through them, because you're going to still get the story, and you'll be really surprised and amazed at yourself at how much you get out of it. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope that you are encouraged to pick up Paradise Lost, and if you are, please let me know in the comments, or if you've read Paradise Lost and you are just happy to see somebody else talking about it,